Hi everyone, welcome back. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day on this beautiful Monday. It's actually a self-care day for me. I'm going to be multitasking here in this video. The other day I made a post announcing that I was going to be making this video on how men with erectile dysfunction can still be able to thoroughly sexually satisfy their partners, their female partners. And I found it quite interesting and a little bit disturbing. One of the responses I saw on that video. So this guy, on that post. So this guy says, and I get it, right? That was his kind of initial knee-jerk reaction where he says Viagra. And it says a lot. Even though he said a little, he said so much. I did just wash my hair, so that's why I am patting my face dry as my hair is drying and the water is falling on my face. But the statement, that response to my post that I made regarding this announcement on this video topic that I'm going to address here in this video, it was so, I think, multi-layered, and it goes to show how a lot of men are so self-centered that it comes at a disservice not only to their partner but themselves, right? So for him to say Viagra, it's like under the assumption that obviously he wants to at the same time be thoroughly satisfied while he's pleasing his partner. I think his response is more so geared towards his own sexual satisfaction than it is trying to find ways to sexually satisfy his female partner, given that he has erectile dysfunction, right? So we are going to talk about that here in this video. We're going to break it down right here in this video. Like I said, I'm about to be multitasking. So I did purchase this foot sock mask the other day, and I really have been enthused to try it out. My first time ever trying a foot mask. I've been to like spas to get pedicures, but I haven't done this. So I think it's pretty straightforward. It says wash feet with warm water. I just got out the shower and washed my hair. Remove the sock style mask from the packet and pull apart the opening at the top. Put a mask on each foot and relax for up to 20 minutes. Remove the mask and massage any remaining product into the feet. Dispose of the used sock style mask and packaging responsibly. Do not flush the mask down the toilet. So this foot mask is made with apple extract, peppermint oil, and shea butter. Alright. See here. Ooh, this looks like it's gonna be really relaxing here. Ooh. I'm excited. Say pull apart, or I think it says something about scissors. I may have to go grab some scissors here for this one. Let's see if I can do it without the scissors. If I can just pull it apart. I'm really excited to get into this video because I do think that a lot of men unfortunately have it mistaken. I think I'm doing this right. I think I am. Wow, we're gonna find out. I think you just put it on. Yeah, like a sock. Alright. And it says it fits up to a size. Ooh. Ooh, it feels so... feels so good because it's like snug tight on my foot. Alright. I love it. I love the way it feels on my foot. Alright, so hold on. I'm not saying we're going to multitask, but I want to make sure I do this video topic justice here. I know a lot of men want to know the answer to this question because the truth of the matter is a lot of men have reached that point of erectile dysfunction, and some came very prematurely, I think, with their dysfunction before they ever expected to, right? It's almost like, okay, it's a given that as we age, right, our bodily functions begin to deteriorate, and they function differently as we age. And especially if we don't take care of ourselves, right? That sometimes speeds up this process of aging. So it goes without saying that as we age, different functions within our body, they operate differently, right? And the sexual arousal, sexual response cycle within men and women definitely are impacted by the factor of aging. Not only does aging negatively impact that sexual response cycle when it comes to being sexually aroused, reaching the point of orgasm and ejaculation, there are other things that negatively impact it as well, aside from aging, including stress, diet, drugs and alcohol, different psychological factors. It could be medications that a person is on. I've addressed this before in previous videos. And I made a whole video on erectile dysfunction, describing exactly what it is, the neurobiological components of erectile dysfunction, and different factors that contribute to this dysfunction, and ways that it can be treated, right? Now, these videos, when I come to you guys, obviously are more educational videos. I do welcome you guys to feel free to interact, and if you are so bold and courageous to share your experience and perspective and your insights on these topics, obviously it's for mature audiences only. But yeah, a lot of men have reached that point of erectile dysfunction. And it came, I think, to them by surprise. Like, they did not expect this. They're like, what's happening here, right? And I think it's nothing more embarrassing, I think, for a man to obviously experience this in front of a woman unexpectedly. And not only that, but come with this kind of confidence, right, going in that he's going to be thoroughly satisfy her. He's going to lay it down just to, unfortunately, disappoint her. Nothing more embarrassing. And I think there is so much pressure and so much emphasis being placed on the performance of men in the bedroom, right? And that performance usually is like relegated, is restricted to the penetrable sex, right? Him penetrating her through intercourse. There's so many different ways to be sexually satisfied. So that's what I'm going to get into here in this video, because I think we place those limitations upon ourselves, and obviously it's not leading to sexual satisfaction in the bedroom, where we're not able to meet those expectations, given that we put our own limitations on those. So let's talk about it, because Viagra. Now, obviously, there are supplements, there are medications, there are natural remedies to erectile dysfunction, right? To solving that problem for men who suffer from this in the bedroom. I think, like I said, I know it's embarrassing. A lot of men are ashamed to admit that they experienced this. In fact, my last partner who I dated from 2014 to 2017, he suffered from that, right? And how I found out was, like, I think most women, we're very, like, explorative, right? We're like detectives, and we like to, see what's really going on, and at the time he invited me to his place. I pretty much had moved in at that point, right? Because I was spending exuberant amount of time at his spot, day and night, and I had my own space in Manhattan, Washington Heights, but he lived in Little Italy in the Bronx, and I was just spending the night. you know, frequently, and I'm curious, right? When I feel like when you are genuinely interested in a person, you're going to explore. You're going to want to know things about them, right? You're going to know. If you're really, really genuinely interested in a person, you want to know like almost everything about them. So I'm like, you know, scoping out the scene, peeping out what's going on in the bedroom, and he wasn't home one time, right? So I opened the drawer, and I saw these pills that were not labeled. They were in this plastic packaging, but there was no labeling on the package, right? He had taken it out of the package, and so I'm curious, like, what the fuck is this, and why is he taking it? And I think someone else made a point to say that when you're dating someone, like, yo, check their medicine cabinet, because you just have no idea who this person is, and what their condition is, right? What their situation is. Like, you know, sometimes people mask their problems and who they are, portraying themselves to be one way when there's really something else going on, right? So I took it upon myself to do my own research, and I looked at the pill, and I saw the number and the color of the pill, and I googled the number and the color of the pill, and it took me basically to this foreign website. Basically is a company that sells these pills for men to help with their performance in the bedroom, and I'm just like, aha, interesting. I think, like, for me, I think my video is a little bit choppy. Hopefully that my video and my sound are still in sync, but I didn't think much of it. I'm just like, all right, you know, big deal, right? I did bring it to his attention, though. Like, that's just the kind of person I am. Like, I'm 100, I'm straightforward. So I'm just like, so you take pills, right? For arousing and being able to maintain an erection. And he was just like, yeah, but not really. Like, he kind of denied it and, like, minimized it and brushed it off. And I'm just like, it's not a big deal. Like, you know, if you take pills, you take pills. He was like, I don't really need it. I'm like, okay. And so over time, I noticed with him is that when he drank, and especially in excessive amounts, this is something that I unfortunately had to deal with. I didn't know this, like, going into the relationship. This is something that was revealed to me over time, you know, as we got to really know each other, was that he had a problem with alcohol. He drank excessive amounts, like ridiculously excessive amounts. Sometimes to the point of blackout. This was like later down towards the end of our relationship. But I noticed there was like a correlation between how much he drank and his ability to be able to maintain and sustain an erection, or get an erection and maintain it. And I noticed that the strength of his erection was impacted by the amount of alcohol consumption, right? And it really irked me, though, because I noticed, like, okay, when he didn't drink and we became intimate with each other, he had a full-blown erection. It was no problems. But when he drank, and it's a common myth, too, for a lot of men, because you'll hear people say, oh, alcohol, like, gets your dick hard, right? And you're able to have better sex. No. Or it gets you horny. No. There's a point where you're drinking too much alcohol, right? And over a period of time, like, it begins to throw things off within your body. Like, let your body naturally do what it's supposed to do. When you're ingesting foreign substances into your body, it's going to have an adverse effect, right? Your body is going to have a way of responding to that. Apparently his penis wasn't too happy with the alcohol that he was drinking, right? So, yeah. And I realized that, okay, he had these pills, and I noticed that over time, obviously, you know, he would be using the pills, because you go and you look and it's like, okay, he's ran out or he's getting low. And I'm just like, okay, all right, you know. So I had to deal with that. I definitely have experience in dating someone with erectile dysfunction, and this person was, okay, so I met him in my very early 30s. I remember me celebrating my 32nd birthday here in New York City. With him, we went to this BDSM club. So I think I was like 2 years his senior, relatively, 2 to 3 years his senior. So he was like late 20s, like 29. You're talking about erectile, like having these problems, you should not, right? You know, all else is equal and you're a healthy individual. This is not something that you should be unfortunately dealing with, but he was. And I know that a lot of men, you know, have this problem. It's one thing, okay, because there are different ways erectile dysfunction can manifest itself, right? So, you know, it's first and foremost being able to just get aroused, get your dick up, right? You know, then it's being able to maintain an erection through completion to the point where you want to complete it, right? Not that your body and your dick decides for you when that completion is going to be. So some men have premature ejaculation problems where they ejaculate before the time they want to. We're talking about within seconds, minutes, right? And that definitely has a dampering effect on the intimacy between you and your partner. If this is you, a lot of men have this issue, right? So we're talking about erectile dysfunction, the strength of an erection, but there's so many different other factors too, right? How things can go wrong for a man. I mean, you can just be born with a lesser sized penis, unfortunately. And a lot of men watching this, I'm sure this is your situation, right? So you wonder, like, okay, let's say you are in the category of you have a smaller penis, or you're in the category where environmental factors have unfortunately negatively impacted your ability to be able to sustain an erection. And thoroughly sexually satisfy your partner, you're like, okay, what do I do? And I think it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of this video, how, you know, initially men think Viagra, or you think some kind of supplement to kind of combat or address the issue of erectile dysfunction, when no. I both think, like I said, that's very kind of self-centered. Yes, obviously you want to be sexually satisfied, but whoever takes the time to think about how they can thoroughly sexually satisfy their partner. I mean, you would think if your relationship is truly based on love and intimacy, that would be your first and foremost concern, right? Not that it's your job to keep your partner happy, because those two are separate things. And I made a whole video on that. That it is not your job to keep your partner happy, right? But if there is a level of expectation from your partner, usually in relationships, where you are tasked with that responsibility of satisfying your partner in different ways, right? Especially sex. I mean, it takes two to make it happen. Otherwise, of course, they can do it by themselves. Sometimes it's even better to just masturbate and get it over with yourself. But if you're going to be involved with someone, wouldn't you want to be able to do things that make them feel good, right? And to keep them coming back and that draw you two closer together. So let's talk about it. And you guys know that I come from a perspective of psychology, right? As a psychologist, I always like to integrate the behavioral component of this, in most topics that I address, the psychological underpinnings of whatever it is I'm talking about. And in this case, we're talking about erectile dysfunction and sexual satisfaction. So, when we think of sexual satisfaction, right? Like I said, a lot of people go to, oh, you know, you got to have a big dick, right? And you got to be able to penetrate, you know, deeply and thrust your manhood, you know, in her at a certain rhythm, and that's sexual satisfaction. But that's a very limited, narrow perspective. In this video, I want to broaden that perspective, and I've done that before in my other videos. Coming from a person who identifies as a submissive baby girl in the context of BDSM, right? Bondage, discipline, sadomasochism, it's alternative sexual lifestyle. I must say that a lot of y'all are blindsided to these alternatives, right? You just gotta really open up your mind, and in doing so, you'll be able to learn more about yourself, your own anatomy, your own physiology, and you'll be able to learn about your partner. And when you reach that point, like everything just opens up, and it increases, it heightens that arousal, it heightens that sexual satisfaction between you and your partner. I've made, in the previous videos, I made the statement of saying that it takes a master just to be able to get their partner, we're talking about a female, a woman, partner, or sexually aroused without even touching her. I haven't really taken the time to delve deep into how this can happen. I'm giving examples of how I've experienced this in previous relationships. But yes, there are ways that you could get your partner aroused without even touching her. Let's talk about it. Very limited. People don't know what sexual satisfaction is, just like everything else. What's the trend? They have no idea, and it's good, I think, to explore it, right? To be open enough to explore other alternative ways. So, in thinking about human behavior, and we're going to talk about classical conditioning, going back to Psychology 101, right? For those psychology buffs who are familiar with the infamous research study that Ervin Pavlov did. He's a Russian neurologist and psychologist and physiologist who studied the behavior in animals, right? And the infamous salivation study he did with dogs, where he saw that dogs can be conditioned to an unconditioned stimulus, right, through the pairing of an unconditioned stimulus and a conditioned stimulus. So I'm going to break this down, right? Initially, the dog would salivate to the sight and smell of the meat powder, right? When you come in, you're walking in, and you have this meat powder, the dog can see it, they can smell it, and then they automatically begin to salivate. So what Pavlov found is that the dogs could be conditioned to salivate not only to the meat powder, but also to the sound of a bell. And what happened was there was a pairing of the bell and the meat powder together. So previously, the meat powder was the unconditioned stimulus, right? What became the conditioned stimulus was the bell, and pairing those two things together. When you pair those two things together, the dogs did what? They salivated, right? Just at the sound of the bell. So the bell would come first, and then the meat powder being paired together, and then the dogs would salivate, right? I use that example as a very infamous research study that is taught to all psychology students, but it's the basics of human conditioning. To say that as human beings, right, we're almost like computers. We can be programmed. Many of us are programmed on a subconscious level, not even aware that we're programmed in many different ways, right? Take another example with the police, right? Most of us have been classically conditioned or programmed to elicit the response of fear when we see and hear those red, blue, and white sirens, right? It automatically gets our blood pumping, makes us afraid. Some of us get so afraid that you try to run, right? You activate your amygdala in your brain, that fight-flight response is activated, and you try to escape. That would not be a good response. But a lot of us, we soak at the sound of that. And yes, it's very unnerving. It's very frustrating. It's anxiety-provoking, right? But that just goes to show that, and another example, that when you have these sirens, when previously before the sirens probably meant nothing to any of us, right? Other than it being like alarming, but to elicit fear in a person, right? You're classically conditioned to elicit that fear response because what comes with it, what's paired usually with those sounds, if you're driving, what's paired with that is that you're being stopped, you're being pulled over, and being summoned for an infraction, a traffic violation that usually results in a ticket. It could sometimes result in being arrested. So you have been classically conditioned. You've learned that those sirens aren't a good thing, especially when they come behind you, right? When you're driving. You don't even have to necessarily hear those sirens. You can just see you can see the colors, the flashing, right? And it's coming behind you, you're driving, like, okay, you automatically get afraid, right? You're like, oh shit, I did something wrong. So in that same vein, keeping with that same reasoning, right, and theoretical understanding, I want to illustrate how, in the context of sexual satisfaction and intimacy, we, black men, black women, right? My audience, I know, is broad. It extends beyond just black people. But if you're watching this and you're black, well, some of you are watching right now. But in general, just people, there are ways that we have been conditioned in relationships, and I think it's worth noting to take some time to really reflect on how you have been conditioned. Could be positively or adversely in relationships. Some of y'all have been adversely conditioned. You're probably with someone right now where, unfortunately, your partner has an adverse reaction. They have been classically conditioned to elicit disgust, right? They're turned off just by your sight, the presence of you, right? This is not something that is welcoming when they see you in that respect. That's not what you want, right? You want the opposite, right? You want to just be able to look at your partner, for your partner just to look at you and then automatically become aroused. That's how things should go. How can you get to that point? Well, damn sure you don't get to that point by arguing all the freaking time, right? Nitpicking, and not taking into account what satisfies your partner. So I'm going to do a little bit of self-disclosure. Man, this feels good, I think it's like moisturizing my feet. I've told this story before, how when I first moved to New York City back in 2014, I was dating this former New York Times reporter. It was an older white man. A lot of y'all probably like shocked, like, what? I thought you were Pan-African, I thought you were pro-black. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. But sometimes, not often though, I can count on like 2 or 3 fingers how many white men I've dated. But I did date this former New York Times reporter. Lived in New York, on the island, and I would say he was a master, because for me, especially as a sapiosexual, it takes for a man to meet me where I am, right? And I think a lot of women are like this. I can't speak for all women, but what I've observed is that a lot of women, we respond to that intellectually based interaction, conversation, right? To have that level of intimacy that doesn't involve physical touch. It starts there first, right? One may describe this as, that the warming up phase, right? That foreplay in a relationship. It's just like those subtle things. It could just be conversations, just being understood and being attentive to your partner. Right? When you communicate that level of attention, when you display that level of attention towards your partner, for whom attention is important, it's like a love language, that's where it starts. And a lot of y'all, and I think even more recently, with this advent of social media and everybody looking for instant gratification and being the center of attention themselves, that they forget that it's not always about you. But that's kind of the world in which we have kind of been shaped by, and that we live in, where everyone is just fiending for attention themselves, that to even take time to give that attention to someone else, right, genuinely and from the heart, it seems unnatural, when before that wasn't the case. So that is very problematic. But what I can say is, going back to that relationship that I had with this person, is that yes, there was that level of attention, attentiveness, of understanding, of knowing who I am, knowing the innermost parts of who I am, and paying close attention to that. How many of you watching this actually know what your partner likes? What satisfies your partner? You probably don't. You do it, you probably learn through trial and error, which that could be a way of learning, right? But for me, I think that there is some caution that should be taken to take that approach, right? And taking that approach of learning your partner, especially in a sexual manner, through trial and error. For example, for me, like, I don't like fingering. There are a lot of things that are, I think, normal, right? Or common in relationships and intimacy between partners, that it's repulsive to me, that turns me off. I don't like the fingering. So if a guy who doesn't take the time to get to know me, which that has happened before, right, unfortunately, doesn't really know me, they may think that I like that, and they try it and see that I'm repulsed at that, like I'm turned off. Going back to the classical conditioning, it's just like, do you think that experience, right? Let's say if I'm with a guy, and we get to the point where we're in bed together, and he starts to finger me. Do you think thereafter, when I see him, especially if I don't respond well to that, right? If I don't like, my body doesn't like that, and you're doing that, do you think that I am going to get excited and aroused at the thought of you? Or you think there may be some hesitation, a reservation, right? If you've done things that I don't like, that's just like going to a restaurant and there's terrible service. It's something that you don't like that is happening at that restaurant, right? Maybe on their end they think, oh, this is cool, this is how we do things, and other people continue to return. But if you don't like that, right? If a person doesn't like what's happening, they're not likely to return to eat there, right? So in that same vein, if a man is fingering me, unbeknownst to him that I don't like that, I'm not going to be aroused, enthused by the thought of him. Or even if he texts, that's not going to arouse me. Like if he sends me a text message, right? Another thing is, I don't like oral sex. I just don't. There are a lot of things I do like. I'm going to get into that. But there are a lot of things I just don't like that are, I would say, that are present in a lot of relationships, like regular vanilla relationships. But I just don't. Not my thing. I don't like oral sex, giving or receiving. And there have been a situation where a man thinks that, okay, well, a lot of women, most women like this, so you must like this, right? And they proceed to give me oral sex, and it's just like, okay, yes, this is a form of stimulation, but it's not really my thing. It's just not. And another thing is, like I said, going back to me being a sapiosexual, I like that psychological stimulation, right? First and foremost. Not that I don't like the physical stimulation, but it has to start with the psychological and that connection. And that power dynamic has already been established without physical touch coming into the picture. Which I think a lot of men make the mistake of jumping the gun. And they assume that the way to establish that power dynamic, because like I said, I am a submissive, a lot of y'all are probably taken aback, and it's not registering in your mind because you may think that I come off as being more dominant. I am dominant, yes, in my professional world, but I'm telling you, what turns me on is a certain power dynamic between man and man, and I like for a man to take the lead. I like for a man to just be dominant, and not only that, but be the alpha male in his pack, because there is a difference between dominance and alpha maleness, right? A lot of men are dominant, especially sexually, but they're not alpha, right? They don't have any socioeconomic power in the context of our social structure and society. They just don't. So yeah, that's my thing. And so yeah, those things just not, yeah, they turn me off, right? And A lot of men get it wrong. A lot of men jump the gun, especially from dating sites, and just automatically assume that, okay, yes, I indicate what my interests are, you know, a variety of interests, not just specific to sexual things, sexual interests, but interests in general. So I may have a tag for Pan-Africanism. I may have a tag for hiking, traveling, BDSM, spankings, right? And then for them, they just automatically go there, right? To the point of, you know, trying to explore, oh, well, you know, what are your favorite sexual positions, for example, or, you know, saying things that speak to, yes, my interests, but it's too soon, bruh. Like, we have to establish that mental connection, and there has to be a degree of psychological safety. Psychological safety. This is where a lot of men miss the boat. So, in the context of men who are experiencing erectile dysfunction, right? And who somehow think the solution to that is Viagra or some kind of supplement, you know, to be able to get the juices flowing down there. It's just like, okay, maybe for some women, right? But you have to know your woman. Start there. Know what your woman likes. For a woman like myself, you might be wasting your money getting Viagra. I mean, granted, yes, you want to be sexually satisfied, but there are ways I think that could happen too. For men who are at the point where Viagra doesn't even do anything for them, right? Or they are lesser endowed physically in terms of size down there. What is Viagra going to do? Right? So you have to be able to know how to sexually satisfy your partner. For me, I've already said, it's the mental connection. Beyond that, tied into the mental connection, obviously, is that power exchange, right? And knowing that it's something that is expressed, but more so felt between me and this person. And that comes through communication. That comes just through the subtleties of our interactions with each other. The way he treats me and his gestures, right? Going back to the old school, old-fashioned the way men would interact with a woman. Opening doors, right? Yeah, just basic things just to show a level of who's wearing the pants in that relationship, right? Just taking the lead, you know. You got men that say, oh no, you go first. Like, you know, it's like, where is that level of the courage? You know, it's not there in men. Where is the veracity? Where is the alpha maleness, right? Where is the sense of direction that a woman can feel secure and safe enough to rest in her femininity? It starts there. A lot of y'all men, unfortunately, a lot of y'all men are being emasculated. Don't even know that you are and have become emasculated through the socialization within our society that has taken place over the past several decades, especially with all these feminist movements, women's rights, and Me Too. You know, it's interwoven in a lot of media that you consume on a daily basis, not even realizing, okay, this is being promoted. You're ingesting this information. You're being shaped on a subconscious level. You think that, oh, it's just entertainment, not knowing that the things you're laughing at is just having a direct effect on your psyche. It's restructuring your belief systems and your perspectives and what you normally would have had boundaries and set boundaries for. You're more opening and more permissive, right? And it's becoming an integrated part of your psyche and who you are, right? Your mind is accommodating, right? Making room for these new subsets of ideologies that are really being forcefully imposed upon people in society. You know, this is not to say what's right, what's wrong. I'm just speaking to the reality of what's happening. So a lot of men are becoming more emasculated and then wondering why the dynamic between them and a woman has shifted, right? A lot of women are becoming more masculine, less feminine, and so yes, it creates this off balance, right, dynamic between a man and a woman. But yeah, going beyond that sapiosexual mental connection, once that's established, things that I like. Okay, things that I like, I've said this before, obviously are, spankings. And beyond, like, I think it's higher intensity than a spanking, right? I say spankings and people probably think, oh, it's just like a little tap on the ass, right? But no, I like beatings. Let's be clear. I like beatings. I like bondage. I like pussy worship. These things, a man doesn't even have to get an erection to do. He doesn't even have to be able to get an erection to give beatings, right? To do bondage, to do pussy worship. What I mean by pussy worship, right? It's levels to this shit. But yes, when we're talking about like a woman being sexually satisfied, even first and foremost becoming sexually aroused, in getting to know her, right, and what really stimulates her, you can be able to elicit that arousal within her, right, just based on certain things. I've had this happen, and I'm fucking blown away. I'm like, yo, these are masters, yo. When I say, like, not even touching me, you don't have to touch a woman to get her sexually aroused. It can just be a look. Going back to, let me take a sip on this, yo. It's getting kind of heated up in here. But going back to my partner who I dated, who was a former New York Times reporter, very smart man. I was at his place, and before I got there, right, let's rewind. Before, because I had moved to New York City in 2014 from Atlanta, Georgia, where I had lived for like 3 years down there. Moved to New York. Before coming here, like, we had already like established this connection, right? It was like constant communication. Like, women say this to men, communication is important. Some men say the same thing, communication is important, but is it really? You say that, but your actions are not lining up, right? Because you're not consistent with the communication. Like, you're just very distracted. There's a lot of distractions, obviously, with the advent of social media. People, I think, have become ADHD-ish as a result of social media. Their mind and all these different apps and shit, yeah, they're just pulled in so many different directions that they may say they have an intent to establish a relationship with a partner, but it never happens because they don't even have the level of focus to be able to sustain one. So yeah, back then there was a lot of communication back and forth. Like, we were building, we had already established that degree of enough trust, right, before I come to New York City. And then when I got here, we finally met, and I was invited to his place. And yeah, he was very accommodating, very old school. That's just what I like, the old school, old fashioned type of, what they call it, 1940s man, or relationship. Definitely the man wear the pants, and then doing so, he don't have a problem with being the provider at the same time. Like, that just that's like an unspoken kind of rule. And in fact, they want to, right? They want to be the provider because it does establish a degree of dominance and power dynamic in that relationship. It's very clear, like, who's in charge, based on who pays for the meals, right, and who chooses, like, where we're going to eat too. Like, he made that decision. Went to a lot of places. Now that I'm reflecting, I got a chance to really explore New York City. Was all over this joint, yo. He took me to a lot of places, a lot of eateries and dining places and restaurants across New York, Queens, everywhere, Manhattan. We were all over. That's actually the first, I think that's when I got introduced to wine. I didn't really know much about wine. Now that I hadn't had drinks before, alcoholic beverages, but wine, yeah, he introduced me to the different types of wine. He was like a wine connoisseur. He had, this wine thing at his place. And yeah, I was just able to choose what type of wine I wanted. Like, yo, I deal with the finest of men, okay? Classy. That's just my style. Don't deal with these. I used to. I ain't even gonna front. Back in the day, I used to deal with the hood rats, and it's something about the gangsters too, right? Not to assign a certain race or color to one's social status, right? Because a person can be very classy and you can still be black, right? Melanated African American. So it's not about race or color, but it's more just about class. And yes, they are intersected, of course. I know that, I understand that. But yeah, back in the day, yeah, that was kind of what I was attracted to. But when you know better, you do better. And so, yeah, I definitely like the finest things in life. And I am attracted to men. And I've met, even African men here in New York that definitely are classy and I'm talking about they show out, okay? They show out when it comes to the date. I've been there, done that. Maybe I'll do a whole separate vlog on that. But yeah, so treat me to the finest things. I felt very valued. Right, I felt very valued. And so, like I said, the psychological safety had been established between us. And I remember, because that was there, right, the psychological, like a sense of just security and safety, like knowing that, okay, this person doesn't have any ill intent against me. I know their name. I know where they live, right? It's no secrets. It's open communication. Consistent communication by phone. So there's no reason for me to be like, know about this motherfucker. I don't know, right? No reason for me to question or and wonder about any of that, right? So to that end, I felt open. I felt safe enough to just, sit back and allow him to lead, and he did that. And I remember we were sitting in his office, right? In his house. He had this L-shaped desk, mahogany desk, and he told me to sit on the desk, and he was on the phone. He had a phone call. And he took the phone call, but he was giving me directions on what to do, right? This is a part of the whole media something, right? And he had this rule where, when I was in his sphere, that I would be unclothed, which I was comfortable with. These rules were mutually agreed upon. Just understand that. And I was unclothed, very comfortable. I felt free. Alright? It's not too many people that women can feel comfortable. Not too many men where women just feel comfortable just to just be unclothed, just sitting around unclothed, right? I felt very free. And I'm sitting there. He did not touch me, but it was a look. Just the look that he was giving me. I'm sitting on his desk. He's sitting in his office chair on the phone. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but yo, when I say it was a mountain, yo, mountain water just pouring out. It was a fountain, yo. I was talking about waterfall. I could not believe what was happening. When you experience something you never experienced before, you just I didn't even know my body was capable of lubricating so much, producing so much lubrication without physical touch. It was just I literally was conditioned, essentially, right? My body obviously had to be conditioned just to the idea of what was going to happen. It didn't even happen yet, right? Going back to the study, right, of the dog salivating, just to the anticipation of getting the meat powder by hearing the bell, right? So it was just like, I knew that what was coming, right? And what was coming was going back to what sexually satisfies me is the beatings, right? That was coming, the beating and the bondage. And yeah, I knew it was coming, and I was just waiting. And I made the video before about, yes, the idea of pussy worship and the idea of men not rushing. You know, I'm dropping so many jewels, right? But when I say this, you just have to explore, experiment with. Some of y'all probably have, but some of y'all have no idea the value of these things unless you actually try them out with a woman. But taking the time to really show appreciation to not only her mind, or of course first and foremost her mind, right, and her inner wishes and the parts of herself, but also her body and every aspect of her body. And I just felt like, as I was sitting on his desk and he's on the phone with his brother, it was hilarious. He was paying tribute to every crevice of my physical body. I saw it with his eyes. His eyes took possession of my body just by him looking at me, right? And he wasn't like this eerie fucking like uncomfortable look. It was more like a glance. It was like he occasionally, you know, granted he was on the phone handling business, but it was like the occasional glance at my body and knowing that he possessed me, right? Like he did. And I'm sitting there as I was told, just like sitting there unclothed. And when he hung up the phone, it's like, it wasn't even that many words exchanged. It was so much like non-verbal communication just happening. That was just enough. Hung up the phone, he just looked at me, and it kind of signals, asking me like, am I ready, right? And so I'm like, shit, I guess. At that point, I'm like leaking freaking wet. I get up, yo, the fucking desk was just soaked. I was like, oh shit. That shit was lit. I was like, damn. And then it felt good knowing that, you know, what was happening between us, it was really focused on my sexual satisfaction. Now, he definitely was lesser endowed. So this idea of us having penetrable sex was not priority. It was more so like bondage, spankings, and yeah, right? And I was blown the fuck away. That's all I can say to that one, right? And I have many more examples. I'll give another example. So there was this African man. Now that person was white. That was a former New York Times reporter. But there was this African man I was dating, and he's still a good friend of mine till this day. We had established a good relationship. That's when I was living out in Los Angeles, right? I was completing my doctoral studies, and I would come here to visit, and he would allow me in his space. He would give me the key to his space. Like, you know, I'm a trustworthy person, right? Knowing that, you know, I don't have any ill intent. He didn't have any ill intent. We're just very transparent and open and honest and well-intentioned towards each other. And so, yeah. And he was Muslim on top of that, y'all. Very, like, strict, very religious, you know, just doing things in order. Sex really was supposed to be a part of the equation between us, but it surfaced and it made its way in the equation. But I found it interesting just how it kind of slipped into the equation. And I remember, like, the foreplay, beyond just having like really intimate, deep-seated conversations by phone when I was in Los Angeles, he's here, it was more like just the physical foreplay. This was physical foreplay that happened when I actually got to his place. And oh my gosh, it was no, like, it wasn't like, our clothes were still on, right? But the way he caressed me, the way he touched me, the way he attended to me, like, I literally felt like I was the only person in the room. This is what it means to be fully present, right? In the here and now, right? And this is a technique. This is like a therapeutic technique that we teach our clients in psychotherapy. But it like, and we practice this ourselves too, in being with our clients, right? Because it just makes them feel very seen, and it helps to solidify that relationship, that rapport that you build with the person, right? And just being fully present. A lot of people don't, like I said, they don't know how to do that, unfortunately, because, like, going back to this whole freaking social media thing, and us just needing instant gratification, social media, we're programmed by, right? So you feel the constant need to check your phone, right? You gotta pick up your phone. You gotta, even amongst, in the presence of a person that you are supposed to be intimate with, right? Or you're on a date with. And it can just be a platonic situation, right? You're on a date. I see families. I see people, like, convening, at restaurants, and no one is conversing. No one is, like, making eye contact with the other person. It's just, everyone is like this. Like, are we robotic? What happened? So, going back to just being able to be in the here and now, and that's what I felt, right? And so, when a woman feels that way, it's like, it can easily be reciprocated, right? And, yeah. So, I felt that way, and it was just like, the caressing, and just being able to experience what an orgasm feels like without being penetrated. The body is amazing. And I just feel like, and until men can take the time to slow down for a second and to think about someone outside of themselves, because if not, then why are you even with a woman? If it's really not about her being pleasured, right? Of course you want to be pleasured too, but this is how it works, and understanding that when you pleasure her, you're going to be sexually satisfied. A lot of men miss it because they are so hyper-focused on being sexually satisfied that your ass come prematurely, right? Then nobody is freaking nobody is satisfied, right? You come quick, she obviously not satisfied, and she damn sure ain't coming back to your ass. So take the time to think, right? It's not rocket science, okay? Slow down to think, like, okay, make it make sense. If you are the catalyst, right? You are the one bringing a person, a woman specifically, this sexual satisfaction, this gratification, something that obviously she desires. Otherwise, what the hell, right? You are the one. What do you think that if she's thoroughly satisfied in the way that she wants to be pleasured, right? Going back to what I said earlier, there's different things, things for different people, right? And not everything rocks everyone's boat, right? So, if you are rocking her boat the way she wants it to be rocked, she's going to want more of that, which that's what you want, right? It works for everyone. But if you're just like, you're rushing into it, you're only thinking about getting your nut off, and then it happens quickly, what is the point of that? So, yeah, I like the fact that person, my friend, like, he was able to slow down. And when I say the foreplay lasted, it had to be a good hour. We're not even talking about intercourse. We're just talking about touching and kissing. To the point where I was like at the point craving, because I'm in such anticipation of, like, okay, damn, this is like, I was like talking about ecstasy, yo. We're talking about the dopamine, all these neurotransmitters just firing in my brain throughout my body. I'm just like, I was lit, and I'm just like, damn. And then when it finally came for us to have intercourse. Granted, he was a quickie anyway. I think he was a quickie because he doesn't have sex often, right? Especially just kind of respecting his religious practices. That's just was something that he did on a regular basis. And I think also just being excited. Like, when a man truly likes a woman and he's, you know, aroused by her, a lot of men come quick. That's just what it is. I mean, that's just by my experience. Men come quick. I'm talking about quick as shit, yo. Not even exaggerating. Like 2 minute quick. Barely 1 minute. Like, damn, that was fucking quick. But I was surprised to see that I orgasm. And I orgasmed before he even inserted into me. I'm just like, I never had done that before. First of all, most women don't even have orgasms when they have intercourse, right? To get an orgasm, most women have to like stimulate themselves, like stimulate their clitoris with a vibrator. So I've experienced it that way, but I had never experienced an orgasm, like with a man. And so I'm orgasming, and like my whole body was like, yo, orgasm me. And I was just like, oh my God, yo. That, you talking about that, that's some deep shit right there, right? So, of course, I wanted more. Of course, I fucking wanted more of that, like, his touch, right? And I think the more he withheld, the more I wanted it. But then it gets to a point where it's just like, okay, it becomes frustrating, right? And experiencing, like, this neurosis is like, okay, you want something so bad, but you're not getting it, then you just get very frustrated and annoyed, and you like get very like kind of a little bit angry, and you just like shut down. And that's kind of what happened. It's just like, all right, fuck you, you know. Like, you better sit here and play mind games with me. And like I said, it has to be consistent attention and communication, which he like it was kind of lacking in that department. But we're still friends. Like, we're still cool. It's like more of a brother to me, and I treat him as such because I feel like there are boundaries that have to be set, you know, in interactions like that, you know, because I mean, for me, sex is like, yes, it's very sacred and intimate, and when I'm having that exchange with a person, like, at least in that moment, you know, they're the only person that matters, and it's like vice versa. So that kind of what takes it to that level of ecstasy and sanctity in that exchange. But I want you guys to just take some time to reflect on your own sexual interactions, right, with your partner, and understand that sometimes the blockages that we experience between ourselves and our partner really has nothing to do with that other person. A lot of times it's within ourselves and from past traumas, past failed relationships, bad adverse experiences that you've gone through. And there's this blockage here, and the blockage is kind of keeping you from being able to connect to that other person in a more intimate and fulfilled way. So that's a thought. But I'm curious to hear, I know much of my audience is men, so I'm curious to hear what you guys think about what I've shared. I think that I've given ample examples and come from a perspective that is very simplistic, that a person can easily understand. Feel free to drop your comments below, and I may come back with a part 2 to this video. Feel free to also send me a direct message via my email if you guys would like for me to follow up specifically to a certain question or comment that you have. And I will catch you guys in the next one. It's like, oh. Just sometimes when I think about the things that I am aroused by, I get aroused in the moment. That's why I have to catch myself, because I'm just like, that's just how strong it is. That's how strong that connection or that degree of conditioning, I would say, the strength of it, that's pretty much how strong that conditioning is in my mind. So yeah, it works for a man who gets it. A lot of men, it just go over their head. So hence the reason why I have chosen deliberately to not have sex. That's just where I am right now. The last time I actually had sex was January 2021. Okay, so definitely has been over a year. It's going on 2 years come this January 2023. I think I like to keep it that way, because there's nothing more disappointing, I think, for a woman to just not be sexually satisfied thoroughly. it's just, yeah. I can't do it. Wasting my time, given that this flower down here is very sacred, and I'm opening this flower up to a person with the expectation that they're going to do their job and do their just due, and for it to not happen, and for you just to feel like left empty and used. Anyway, hope you guys were able to benefit from this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day.